Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 is a Dragon Ball game that's been getting DLC consistently for going on 8 years now. A very crazy number to fathom, but during those 8 years, a bunch of stuff may have been added to the game, but a bunch of facts may have slipped under the cracks for most people. That's what I'm bringing you all today, the ultimate Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 Iceberg. For those uninitiated, an iceberg is pretty much a giant trivia sheet. At the top are common facts, all the way at the bottom of the list are very uncommon facts that you probably never heard of. Buckle in, folks, this is going to be a very long one, so grab popcorn, a Snickers bar, a Coca-Cola, and let's dive right into the icy waters of the ultimate Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 Iceberg. DLC 17, a very high number that you probably never would have expected this game to get to when it came out in 2016, but alas, here we are. Is it a good or a bad thing this game's still getting DLC? That's not a discussion for today. However, in my personal opinion, I am kinda glad to see it get DLC, especially with the recent announcement of Sparking Zero. Both games getting DLC simultaneously was confirmed, so hopefully both games will be able to prosper and thrive by getting constant DLC. Mods. Debatably the most known fact about Xenoverse 2 is the fact that the game's modding community is pretty insane. From having character mods, CAC mods, quest mods, the list goes on and on. Anything you want to change about Xenoverse 2, I guarantee you and bet you that there is a mod that has the game crafted to your exact liking. If you want an entire revamp of the entire game, well, there's a Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 revamp project, debatably the most popular mod for a good reason. So if you're looking for a fun game to play with your friends, be it to enact out your Dragon Ball dreams, well, this is the game for you on PC. The Breakers. The Breakers is a very interesting Dragon Ball game, as it was pretty much built using Xenoverse 2 assets. If you're not aware, the Hero Coliseum is a mode inside of Xenoverse 2 that's pretty much a game within a game. It's a mode inside of the game where you don't have to pay anything extra to play it. The Breakers is yet again another game built using Xenoverse 2 assets and engine. However, Breakers is a separate game that costs $20 extra and is not part of the core game of Xenoverse 2. The game never saw wildly high success, but there is a cult following, and the game does look pretty fun from my perspective of someone who's not really played too much of it. Ultra Ego. Ultra Ego is referring to, of course, Vegeta's iconic Ultra Ego form from the manga specifically, and the fact that in the most recent DLC 17, Vegeta has a new form that resembles Ultra Ego from most Dragon Ball fans' opinions. It has the purple hair, the purple aura, though I personally don't think it was based off of Ultra Ego. I think it's just the way the Ultra Supervillain form looks, though being able to draw comparisons to the form is pretty badass, as the closest thing we're probably going to get to is seeing an Ultra Ego Vegeta in animated format. Next Gen Render. The Next Gen Render is referring to this very strange loading screen found inside of Xenoverse 2. Many Dragon Ball fans have speculated that this Goku render would be used for the actual next-gen render for the character models inside of the new version of Xenoverse 2 releasing on the Series X and PS5. At the time of this recording, those versions are not out yet, and we haven't seen much gameplay of them, so we do not know if these are the actual models, but if they are, that would be great, and I really hope they decide to update it universally for all the games on all the platforms. Super Saiyan 1 Nappa. One of Xenoverse 2's very unique traits is the fact that this game actually introduced the Super Saiyan form to Nappa. Dragon Ball Heroes technically did it first, but in a more official capacity, Xenoverse 2 actually decided to give Mentor Nappa the Super Saiyan 1 skill, and this has been one of the more iconic parts of the game for most people, as the custom mentors have a bunch of very cool stuff like this. For example, Goku, you can use like Divine Lasso, Nappa having Super Saiyan, Bardock being able to do the Kamehameha, and so on and so forth. Very fun stuff like that. The cool thing is they even gave Nappa his own portrait and his own model and everything. They didn't have to go the extra mile for that, but they did, and I'm very glad. Xenoverse 1 data. Xenoverse 2 1 data is referring to the fact that you can transfer your Xenoverse 1 save data over to Xenoverse 2. We're 8 years in at this point, and most newcomers have never played Xenoverse 1 and will never actually use this feature. So pretty much in the beginning of the game, you're pretty much just choosing to be able to transfer one of the base Xenoverse 2 CACs to your save file, which doesn't really net you any rewards. However, if you did play Xenoverse 1 before Xenoverse 2, you can actually get yourself some setup moves to transfer over to Xenoverse 2. However, attacks like Super Saiyan and the Ultimate slot won't transfer and will instead convert to Zenny or TP medals. STP medals. Speaking of TP medals, STP medals are a new feature being introduced to Xenoverse 2 starting from May 23rd, 2024. Time of this recording, we don't know much about Super TP medals. However, they look like they're just trying to be what TP medals originally were, as if you're not aware, on the PC and possibly even the PlayStation version of the game, TP medals are extremely easy to mod, and these TP medals are actually treated as premium currency. You can spend real life money to actually obtain TP medals, while on PC PC and on the PlayStation, to my knowledge, you can actually max out your TP medals in a matter of seconds. And that's why they're discontinuing TP medals or introducing STP medals in order to be able to monetize those, and I assume they're going to have a much tighter security knit on these STP medals. Beast Gohan second. About 3 months before DLC 16 came out, the Cell Max update was actually released to the game. They were not released at the same time, but in fact they were released 3 months apart. And in the first update, the Beast transformation was introduced for the CAC, and so was Cell Max and his raid boss fight. However, Beast Gohan was not actually in the game at the time, but this makes it so the Time Patrollers were able to go Beast before Gohan himself was. Lore. Lore is of course referring to the insane lore inside of the Dragon Ball Xenoverse series. Going on to 2015, the universe has built up an insane story that is still being added to this day, especially in this upcoming DLC pack with an entire new transformation being added called Ultra Super Villain for various characters. Vegeta and Rose are the first two to get this new form. I'm pretty excited to see where it goes, but this story has not stopped being updated since Dragon Ball Xenoverse 1, and I'm excited to see where it goes next. Tosak. Tosak is referring to a very infamous NPC in the Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 hub world Kanton City, where you can talk to him, spend some money, and just level up your characters all the way to max. With the recent level cap increase in DLC 17's pre-patch update, you're able to go all the way up to level 120, though it gets very pricey with TP medals the higher you go up. And with TP medal sales ending, it makes me wonder if they're going to make it so getting to 120 requires super TP medals. Only time will tell. Modded CACs. Modded CACs are referring to the fact that on the PC and PlayStation 4 version of the game, players with save editors were able to modify their CACs, put on boss moves, and drag their sorry asses in the rank to try and torture innocent players who are just trying to have fun in the Xenoverse 2 PvP. Thankfully, DIMS has since patched all forms of being able to equip boss moves and stuff like that onto the CACs, and let's hope those CACs do not find a way to get back into the game's PvP. Raids. Raid is another selling factor of Xenoverse 2. Like expert missions, raids themselves were one of the big marketable features for this game, being able to go in with 6 of your friends and be able to challenge a very difficult boss. Raids, in my personal opinion, are a little underwhelming as they're all the exact same thing with no distinguishable gimmicks, with the occasional boss being able to transform and that's about it. Also, raids can't be played offline, which personally hurts them in my opinion, though raids are pretty good for rewards and getting TP medals, though it would do great without being able to get the name Avenger every single time. Eternity. Eternity is referring to the creator of the Xenoverse 2 patcher, Eternity. If you have dabbled in Xenoverse 2 modding, you know the name Eternity. He is the creator of the patcher, and without Eternity, the patcher would not exist, and we would still be replacing CPK files like in 2015. HC. HC is referring to the Hero Coliseum. As we talked about in the Breakers entry, the Hero Coliseum is a game within a game for Xenoverse 2. It's pretty much, if you've ever played or watched a game of Dragon Ball Heroes, it's pretty much like that inside of Xenoverse 2. However, the mode has fell flat for multiple reasons, and to my knowledge has stopped being updated, as with DLC 16, they never added the Beast Gohan figure. The last update was Dragon Ball Superhero Ultimate Gohan. Will they continue to update the Hero Coliseum? I'm not sure. Bring it on! Bring it on, Gohan! Emotes. Emotes are referring to the fact that you're actually able to emote in the lobby. The emotes all consist of iconic Dragon Ball poses, just generic CAC poses, and these are also used to just make the lobby a bit more immersive and be able to set up little fun photos with the lobby's photo mode now. So emotes are a very fun addition that were also in Xenoverse 1, but they got their full potential utilized in Xenoverse 2. Reused content. Reused content is referring to the fact that so much of Xenoverse 2 is just reused from Xenoverse 1, coming from character voice lines, movesets, skill sets, and parallel quests, even story quests and cutscenes were all just reused from Xenoverse 1. At this point, Xenoverse 1 was just a beta for Xenoverse 2, and I would not be surprised if I was right. Dokkan Beast. Dokkan Beast is referring to the fact that the most recent Beast Gohan in Dokkan Battle, the STRLR Beast Gohan, is actually using a Xenoverse reference as his Ultra Super attack with a Power Awakening or Orange Piccolo. In the game's story mode in DLC 16, as I'm sure you're aware, there's a cutscene where Gohan and Piccolo both do the dual special beam cannon to kill Cell Max. This super attack was referenced in Dokkan with the new LR where they both do the special beam cannon that killed Cell Max yet again. Xenoverse 3. Do I really need to go over this one? Unplayable characters. Unplayable characters referring to the fact that Xenoverse 2 has no shortage of unplayable characters. In fact, there's over 20 NPCs in the game that you cannot control, ranging from Villainous Hercule, Great Apes, unusable costumes like having Nail with a coat on, and just a bunch more unusable costumes inside of Xenoverse 2. It really makes me wonder why characters like Ray Trunks have yet to be made playable almost 8 years in, but let's hope that some of these characters are actually added in as a free update or even DLC. Being able to make Ray Trunks playable would be something I don't think not many people would complain about. Moving down a little bit, we are now talking about Dr. Hedo. Dr. Hedo, of course, from the new Dragon Ball Super movie, Superhero, is one of the main antagonists of that movie, and is the result of the movie's plot for the most part. Dr. Hedo does make an appearance inside of Xenoverse 2, however, he's a modelless NPC that only appears in text boxes. Though I say modelless, though he looks like he does actually have a full model, because his portrait does look like he has a full model. Let's hope Dr. Hedo finds his way into the actual game, as characters like Elder Kai are actually boss characters and unplayable characters because of the fact that they have models. If Dr. Hedo got a model as well, he would be technically playable, so let's hope he gets one. CAC lore. CAC lore is referring to the fact that many Dragon Ball fans like making lore about their CACs. The whole main selling point of Xenoverse in the first place was to immerse yourself and to be able to make yourself immersed in the Dragon Ball world and being able to play as yourself in the Dragon Ball world, going through the game's story mode and changing the timeline. At the time, it was a huge breath of fresh air, and it still is in my opinion, considering how the story is constantly getting updated still. But as an entry we'll go over later, the CAC seems to be being phased out of the story a little bit in favor of just having a more straightforward plot based around the actual main cast of Dragon Ball. But it doesn't change the fact that Xenoverse 2 was marketed to the people who want to be able to immerse themselves and place themselves in the Dragon Ball universe. Dragon Ball farming. Dragon Ball farming is referring to the ridiculous and tedious method of farming Dragon Balls, running through Parallel Quest 25, the explosion of Namek, over and over and over again. Personally, the wishes are pretty good, and their drop rates are a lot better than they were back in Dragon Ball Xenoverse 1, as you now get 3 chances at the Dragon Ball instead of 1, but that's a quality of life change from Xenoverse 1 that I still feel like could have been made better with higher drop rates in general on the Dragon Ball. Second Form Cell. Second Form Cell is very strange, as First Form and Perfect Form Cell are playable, but Second Form Cell is a boss character for some reason. Not only is he a boss character, but he has his own voice and fight style as well. Like most bosses, his moveset's incomplete, but he is fully functional and playable with mods, so it makes me wonder if Second Form Cell will ever be added as a playable character. Hub World Parallel Quests. In the Hub World, there's many parallel quests you can actually access only from the Hub World. And when you access them from the Hub World, they're a little bit different than they would be if you were to select them from the menu over at the Parallel Quest reception desk. For example, if you get one from the main menu on the Parallel Quest reception desk, you can pick your character. However, if you get it from the Hub World, you're forced into playing as your CAC and not having any allies. So it's a lot tougher this way, actually. Million Raid Quest. Pretty much what it was a reverse raid. Instead of fighting one powerful boss, you fight just a bunch of little weak Cybermen, and you're competing with your team to get the most kills. I'm personally not a fan of it, and it hasn't come back since, and probably for the best. Begin Transformed. Begin Transformed is referring to an unobtainable way of playing Xenoverse 2 is actually starting Transformed. Back in the Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi games, you could be able to play as someone like Super Saiyan 1 Goku at the beginning of a match. You can't do this in Xenoverse 2. The only way you can do this is by picking a character like Majin Vegeta who already starts Transformed, or Caulifla, or Teen Gohan. However, bosses in Parallel Quest can actually start their match Transformed. I don't understand why this is a problem in the game. I really hope they do something to amend this, because not being able to start Transformed is really dumb. I don't really see any good reason for it, other than the fact that they just haven't put it in the feature yet. Get on it, Dimps. Defend Planet Namek. Defend Planet Namek is the most ridiculous and horrible part of the game, and just full-out padding mode of the game. In the main story mode, you're tasked with defending Planet Namek in Dragon Ball Fetch Quest, and you need to do this 14 times in order to get the level cap increase and be able to get the attribute points increase as well. The problem with this is how low the Parallel Quest is, the fact you're forced to play as your CAC, and the fact that you're on the biggest stage in the game being Planet Namek, you need to collect up to 6 Dragon Balls on that stage, makes this quest a giant chore to play through, and there's no good rewards for it other than just being able to talk to Guru after a certain amount of time. Thankfully, you only need to do this 14 times, but that is 14 times too many. Vehicles. Vehicles was, funnily enough, yet another big selling point of Xenoverse 2. My memory might not be serving me correctly here, but I remember seeing a ton of trailers related to Xenoverse 2, and they were promoting vehicles. Unfortunately, vehicles completely fell flat on their face, and there was only one ever added in to the game post-release, that being the Saiyan Pod when Rose Goku Black came out. The Tao Pai Pai stick, which you get from the pre-order DLC, is actually extremely good, and it's something I use whenever I hop on Xenoverse 2 to play a quick game of a Parallel Quest or some online matches or an offline match. Unfortunately, though, vehicles just had a lot of potential to be very fun and unique, but they completely dropped the ball with them. Let's hope they manage to pull them out of obscurity. We Symbol Goku and Vegeta. We Symbol Goku and Vegeta's variations that were not in Xenoverse 1 except when they were transformed were added to Xenoverse 2. However, Dimps being Dimps messed something up, and for some reason they can't go Super Saiyan. I don't really have an explanation why, when in the Universe 6 vs 7 tournament they do go Super Saiyan. Now, the only theory I can think of for why this is the case is because when the Dragon Ball Super anime was airing and when Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 came out, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, the Universe 6 vs 7 tournament was not airing on TV, thus Goku never canonically went Super Saiyan in his Whis Alpha Gi until that actual arc started airing on TV after Xenoverse 2 came out, and by that time they just never went back and amended the issue, as Goku and Vegeta both go Super Saiyan in the game's parallel quests, but they don't do it in the actual versions you can play as. I'm hoping that one of these days in one of these updates coming up they do manage to fix this issue. Dragon Ball Legends. Dragon Ball Legends is referring to the fact that Dragon Ball Legends is pretty much just Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 on the go, as if you play Dragon Ball Legends and Xenoverse 2, you must be playing with your eyes closed if you haven't noticed the similarities between the two. The way the game's mechanics are kind of similar to Xenoverse. The game's assets are taken right from Xenoverse, and tons of the game's voice lines and materials like that are just ported right from Xenoverse 2. It is pretty cool to see how much Legends takes from Xenoverse and how it actually managed to also just spin it around a little bit and make it a little bit different than it actually is in the Xenoverse 2 console game. DLC 10 Final. So originally DLC 10 was meant to be the final DLC of Xenoverse 2. However, when this DLC ended up coming out, in the game's story mode, there is a cutscene with Goku and Oob and your CAC on the Archipelago stage, and there's a dialogue from Supreme Kai of Time which says Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 has come to an end. And funnily enough, after this DLC, there was no content for the game for an entire 9 months. From December 2019 to September 2020, there was no content introduced in the game. However, in a V-Jump issue, it was confirmed the game was getting more DLC. My guess for what happened was, the game was originally meant to end after DLC 10, however, at some point in 2020, the game was greenlit to get more DLC, and ever since then, the game has never gone more than about 6 or 7 months without content. Xenoverse 1 Villainous Variations. Xenoverse 1 Villainous Variations are referring to those very strange variations from Xenoverse 1. If you are a Xenoverse 1 avid fan, you will know what these are. These are pretty much just the villainous form of characters being able to be played as with certain attacks like Darkness Mixer. These variations are actually in Xenoverse 2, but they're only hidden in the data because, of course, Xenoverse 2 takes everything from Xenoverse 1 and just keeps it in the game's files. However, in the Legend Patrol, these variations actually come out of hibernation and are able to be seen in combat. And with mods, they can be accessed and played as, however, they don't have functioning movesets. Rebirth Kamehameha. Rebirth Kamehameha is referring to the fact that in the base 100 parallel quests inside of Xenoverse 2, not counting DLC, of course, God Goku, whenever he is seen, actually has the 10 times Kamehameha skill. Funnily enough, in DLC quests, when God Goku shows up, he doesn't have the skill. This is a homage to Dragon Ball Z Battle of Z, where God Goku in that game is the only game, to my knowledge, where he has a red Kamehameha wave. They did this as well to pay homage to that game, and funnily enough, God Goku was added as a mentor and he cannot get the 10 times Kamehameha skill. So they clearly don't want God Goku to get the skill, but the base game parallel quests have him with that skill. My guess as to why this happens as well is because, surprise surprise, Xenoverse 1 had those quests as well where God Goku has the 10 times Kamehameha, and then that game came out 1 year pretty much after Battle Z came out. Rage Trunks. Brought up earlier, Rage Trunks was, and the fact that he is an unplayable character in this game for some unexplainable reason. There is no reason on the planet to why he's not playable, but he's not, and he's still a boss character only seen in one quest in the entire game, with his own aura and everything. Not entirely sure why this is a problem and why he's not made playable, and was not made playable about like 6 years ago when he came out, but here's to hoping that he gets added one day. Base Broly. Yet again, a very strange oddity. Base form Broly from Z or Super has yet to be introduced into the game. I cannot begin to explain how this has happened, or hasn't happened, depending how you look at it. At this point in my Xenoverse 2 bucket list and wish list, it is what I want to see the most from this game's DLCs, other than the Ultra Super villains, which look very cool. Mentor Moves Missing. Mentor Moves Missing is referring to an issue ongoing in Xenoverse 2 to this day to some extent, where certain mentors just don't have certain moves. Back in the day, characters like Majin Buu and Android 17 and 18 were missing their signature ultimate skills. Majin Buu was missing Angry Explosion, yet he had the dual skill. Same with Android 17 and 18 not having Dead End, Bullet, and Range specifically. They were added in later, yet they had their dual skills since the beginning. Very strange issues like this persist, and very weird things like God Goku not, of course, having the 10 times Kamehameha is still an issue to this day. Tournament of Power Arena. The Tournament of Power Arena is referring to the fact that this is the only versus mode stage which actually has dialogue from outside spectators or announcers. Even stages like the World Tournament stage don't have the World Tournament announcer on that stage. Only Zeno talks on the Tournament of Power Arena, and he only has about 20 voice lines, so playing on the Tournament of Power Arena, make sure you play with your voices off unless you want to hear the same 20 lines over and over. Ranked. Ranked, of course, course, is the game's PvP mode, Ranked Battle, and the fact that it is extremely broken with hackers and modders, and even through all the patches that stop modders from running in to rank with their broken CACs, people have still found ways to cheat, like modding TP, and just overall just ruining the fun for everybody. I have not kept up to date with my Xenoverse 2 ranked lore, so I'm not entirely sure if these issues have been completely fixed, and especially with the new DLC coming out, if they're going to fix it. But I just don't see the point in the playing ranked either, because of the fact there's also no rewards associated with the mode. I really hope they do just a complete overhaul on the ranked system in general, especially considering how bad the game's netcode is. So Xenoverse 2 PvP is not looking too good in terms of actual quality right now, but I know there's a set amount of people that really like the game's mode, and I really hope these issues are fixed for those people specifically, and to possibly attract newcomers. Pre-order DLC. As I was talking about earlier with the Tao Pai Pai pull, the pre-order DLC is the DLC that introduced that vehicle to the game. It's a lot faster than all the other vehicles you can access, and by all the other vehicles I mean the other 2 vehicles in the game, yet it's still very fast and it's very reliable as well, with very sharp turns. It's still really fast and worth using over everything else, considering how there's only one part of Kanton City you ever go to anyway. This DLC also contained Goku Black before he was actually introduced in the anime itself, which is extremely exciting. Goku Black at the time did not actually have a dub voice, and inside of the Goku Black DLC inside of Xenoverse 2, Goku Black actually has his own voice where he has like a very dark and deep version of Goku's normal voice before it was changed to British Goku Black when Rosé came out. I'm probably in the unpopular opinion here, but I personally prefer base Goku Black's voice in Xenoverse rather than the show. Diving a little deeper into these icy waters, we have minute changes. Minute changes are referring to the fact that, remember when I was talking about all that reused junk from Xenoverse 1? Well, that reused junk has a little bit of change, so I guess it's not fully reused. For example, a quest like World Tournament Tag Team, which was one of the first parallel quests inside of Dragon Ball Xenoverse 1, has made its way back into Xenoverse 2 with one change, mind you, with one very important change. Kid Gohan is now a boss at the end of the quest. This goes for pretty much every single quest that was ported from Xenoverse 1 to Xenoverse 2. One single change is applied to the quest, and it's now new, so keep your eagle eyes out for any changes you might spot from Xenoverse 1. Unusable transformation costume. Characters like Super Saiyan Scout or Vegeta, Super Saiyan Goku with the Goku Gi symbol. Just characters like this don't actually exist for you to be able to play as, and only exist as boss characters in quests like Eternal Rival. I really hate this because being able to play as Super Saiyan Vegeta from Namek would have been one of the coolest things ever, and I really think this issue could be fixed if you could choose the costume for your mentor characters. Yet again, why is this not a feature? I don't know, and I'm not going to be trying to solve that little puzzle here on this iceberg. Unimportant CACs. A little hinted at earlier with my story lore entry. The CACs have been a little phased out, to say the least. Ever since the food DLC got introduced into the game, CACs have no longer appeared in any cutscenes. This is due to the fact that the games now use CGI cutscenes for every single cutscene rather than in-game engine cutscenes like back in DLC 1 through 6. Even DLC 6 had its fair share of CG cutscenes that once again phased out your CAC pretty much entirely from the story. Your CAC is pretty much just a messenger and middleman of all conflict, when the main conflict now takes place between 2 cast characters. Whether this is a good or a bad change depends on who you are, and if you like or don't like the CAC feature in general for Xenoverse 2, that's of course a discussion for another time entirely. However, for this Iceberg entry specifically, it's very interesting to note to see how the progression of the game has gone. One choice-based quest. One choice-based quest is referring to the game's story mode and the fact that there's only one quest where you can make a choice and it actually has a very different outcome. I'm talking about one single quest where you get a completely different ending depending on what you choose. In the DLC 16 story quest where you fight Cell Max, there's actually 2 choices you get when Gamma 2 is about to sacrifice himself. You could save 16 or Gamma 2, and depending on what you choose, you'll get a completely different ending, and even get that what if special beam cannon I was talking about. Funnily enough though, if you try pressing back during the section where you choose one of the options, you'll actually crash your game, so definitely don't do that. Dual Angry Explosion. Dual Angry Explosion is once again referring to the missing mentor moves, and the fact that Dual Angry Explosion was the only version of Angry Explosion Boo could use for about 2 years. I don't understand how this happened and why it took so long to fix after multiple DLCs, but it was fixed, which is all that matters. Super Saiyan 1 Ginyu. Inside of the Parallel Quest Return of the Ginyu Force, in the Parallel Quest 4-star section if I'm not mistaken, you fight the entire Ginyu Force. I would like to point out too that this Parallel Quest is a reskin of another Parallel Quest with Ginyu being in Goku's body at the end and Frieza being in full power as the only change. I just point that out. But anyway, inside of this quest, you actually fight Ginyu in Goku's body, as I stated, and Goku will transform into a Super Saiyan when you fight him. This is very cool, and something you cannot do, as it ties into my unusable transformation costumes entry. Funnily enough though, unlike those unusable transformation costumes like Vegeta from Namek with a Scouter outfit and all that stuff, Demigra DLC 6. We all know today, Demigra is in the game and he's fully functional as a boss character. However, back then, Demigra was actually added into the game and then removed. And then he was added again in an update for DLC 8, then removed again. This is also funny because his final form did the same exact thing. He was eventually added in DLC 8 specifically, however his final form never got the light of day as he was completely removed from the game until the Legend Patrol came out. And his data isn't even introduced into the game unless you buy the DLC. Villainous Hercule. Villainous Hercule is referring to Villainous Hercule in the story mode being a completely unique boss character. Most of the times when you fight a boss character like Goku or Gohan or Vegeta, and if one of them goes villainous mode, they'll have the same moveset and be the same character with a power-up. Villainous Hercule is different as he uses his own character entirely with his own moveset and his own combos and fight styles. He doesn't have any voice lines except Hercule's, and he can fly as well, unlike normal Hercule. UI Goku's skills. UI Goku's skills, for the longest time, were not available for the CAC, those being Soaring Fist and Divine Kamehameha. For 2 years specifically, 2 years after he came out, with the Springtime of Time update, the skills were added to the shop for CACs to be able to purchase. These are the actual skills as well, which is pretty cool. Most of the time, when a character who isn't normally meant to have CAC skills gets their skills added as a CAC skill, has a different ID, but these are the actual IDs UI Goku uses, which unfortunately doesn't make him very unique anymore. Minus is done. Transform cutscenes. Inside of Xenoverse 1, you could actually stay transformed in a cutscene going through the story mode. If you're in a story fight and you transformed and the cutscene started, you would actually be able to see your character transformed in that cutscene. However, in Xenoverse 2, this feature was removed for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why this was cut, but there's a patch for Xenoverse 2 in the patcher by Eternity that fixes this issue. So if it bothers you go make sure to turn on this change in the Xenoverse 2 patcher. Lamai. A very strange NPC from Xenoverse 1 called Lamai was actually in the game with a very weird quirk. Most characters, as you might expect, have proper grammar and casing in their name. For example, you have Tano, you have Mikuji, Tosak, all those NPCs with their correct proper casing, right? Especially maybe your character and some of the cast characters like Goku and Vegeta, proper casing. Well, Lamai, for some reason, has a lowercase L in front of Mai, and it's just Lamai instead of having a capital L. I don't really know why this happened. This character was in Xenoverse 1 as well, and it was never fixed. I don't know why, but every time I see him in the hub world, continue to spawn next to him, that bugs me. Get on it, Dims, fix it. Wrong Alpha Goku / Vegeta is referring to Parallel Quest 103, if I'm not mistaken, the one where you fight Zamasu and Rose on the wrong Ruin City stage, where you fight Goku Black, Rose, and Zamasu. Goku Blue and Vegeta Blue fly in. Now, at the time this quest came out, it was in DLC 3. However, Goku and Vegeta Blue did not get their Future Saga outfits until the 4th DLC pack, and because this pack was added before then, Goku and Vegeta used their pre-symbol outfits. This is also why the stage is incorrect and not on the real Future and Ruin. Why they didn't change it back, I couldn't tell you. Bardock's Vision. Bardock's Vision is referring to Bardock's very strange vision in Xenoverse 2. We all know Bardock's vision in the original series where he sees Goku and Frieza and Namek. Well, Bardock's vision in Xenoverse 2 is a lot different, as Bardock's vision in this game instead actually has them looking at Goku and Frieza when they're in golden and blue respectively. This is a very cool touch, and it was one of my favorite parts of the badass intro for the game, and it also set the tone for the CGI cutscenes, which would make their grand debut, and it's one of the most popular features inside of Xenoverse 2. Beach. The beach is referring to the fact that the beach only ever shows up once inside of the game's parallel quest. The beach stage is only ever used in the Metal Cooler Riot parallel quest, and you never see the beach stage again. You only see it in the story mode in the Resurrection of Frieza saga. You don't even see it in the Resurrection of Frieza saga in the parallel quest because of the fact that all the Resurrection Frieza parallel quests are ripped from Xenoverse 1, which this stage does not exist in. Base Teen Gohan. Base Teen Gohan is referring to Base Teen Gohan in the final cutscene of the Cell saga where Gohan T transforms to base form. This is interesting because base form Teen Gohan doesn't exist in the actual game of Xenoverse 2. He's only a Super Saiyan or a Super Saiyan 2. This leads me to believe Base Teen Gohan was added after Gohan himself was made as a character because there's no reason why he can't go base form. Endurance quests. Endurance quests is referring to the very rare parallel quest, Endurance quest, where you're able to fight like up to 30 enemies throughout the entire parallel quest. This is only ever done twice to my knowledge, and it's never done again. This is done for Metal Cooler Riot, the only stage with the beach stage, and then Majin Chaos, where you fight 30 small boos. This is never done again, and honestly, the endurance quests are pretty cool, and they can be very challenging if done correctly. However, the ones in the game are just a slog to get through. Beast ultimate charge. Beast Gohan has his own charge up that you would not think is actually his own because it's just ultimate charge. However, it uses Searching Spirit's animation, which is pretty interesting. But something else interesting is Beast Gohan doesn't have any facial animation when he uses the skill for some reason. This has always bothered me ever since it was pointed out to me that he does not have facial animations, and I can never look at Beast Gohan the same when he charges up anymore. Neither can you. Hirudegarn. Hirudegarn is referring to the very obscure mention of Hirudegarn in one of the game's parallel quest descriptions. Hirudegarn is only mentioned in the plot, yet he doesn't show up in the game at all, even as a boss character. This sucks because he was in Battle with Z, but he's not in Xenoverse, and the only boss characters inside of Xenoverse are the Great Apes and Cell Max. They really need to add Hirudegarn to this game, dude. 2x Crystal Raid. 2x Crystal Raid is referring to the very obscure Crystal Raid game mode, the 2x Crystal Raid. We all know Crystal Raids, the 1v5 showdown, those are fun. But the 2x Crystal Raids are 2v4 showdowns, which are a lot more difficult for the enemy team. These are unique in the fact that they don't just give you 2 players on the boss team, but the fact you can get skills from these quests instead of clothes. These skills come in and guaranteed drop rate every time you play a Crystal Raid, meaning you can eliminate RNG from getting these skills, which is a very nice and fun way to farm these skills up. Too bad you can't play them offline. Mecha Frieza. One of the most obscure and random things in Xenoverse 2 is Mecha Frieza showing up in the game's intro, yet he isn't playable or seen anywhere in the actual game. I could not begin to tell you why this is a thing, but it is. Majub Super Soul. One of the very funny inconsistencies with the game Super Souls is Majub actually having a label in his Super Soul description saying he revives with 1 health bar. However, due to a typo in the game's code, he only gets 1 health instead of 1 health bar when he revives. So, Majub, my boy, you better be careful after you revive. Damage Cell Max. Cell Max actually has a new variant in the game where he actually shows up damaged, with the skin ripped off his head, where he has the white head. This is very cool and a very fun version of Cell Max to fight, as this is the only place you fight him. Something very odd about the Cell Max is, though, that he can't use Disaster Ray, which is very interesting because of the fact that the normal Cell Max can. The reason for this, though, is because this Cell Max, instead of having a different costume index, has his own ID, and as we'll get into in a little bit, for some reason they decided to make him an entirely new character, and since Disaster Ray is an Ean-lock skill, it does not work on this character because he doesn't have the respective Ean files in his Ean file specifically. I know that was a mouthful, but the point is he doesn't have the animation set for Disaster Ray in his animation set files. Hopefully that made sense. If it didn't, we're just moving on anyway. Dokkan Collab. Dokkan Collab is referring to the OG Dokkan Battle 2015 or 2016 celebration, and where Dokkan actually had a collab with Dragon Ball Xenoverse, more specifically Xenoverse 1. They had introduced Supreme Kai of Time, Xeno Trunks, Mira and Toa, and Demigra to the game. Unique Universal Moves. Unique Universal Moves is referring to moves like Super God Fist. Super God Fist, we all know how that move is, right? The CAC is able to learn it, Goku has it. Well, they are technically able to learn the move. There's actually a lot of differences between, for example, Goku Super God Fist is actually putting him in a different stance at the end of the attack, where if you use the one for the CAC, it always puts you in the Earthling stance as attack. Funnily enough, Majub himself also has his own Super God Fist, which is actually a lot easier to combo into, and I believe it even has longer range as well. This is the case for a lot of moves in the game that are technically unique and universal. Like, for example, Android 16's Hell Flash is actually unique to him because he takes his arms off, while there's a different animation for all the other characters. Timebreaker Aura. Timebreaker Aura is referring to the game's training mode, and if you actually have a Crystal Raid skill 1, it gives you the Timebreaker Aura and Awakening skill. The fun fact about this is you can't actually use the Awakening skill, it actually starts you out transformed, which is one of the only times it's ever happened inside of Xenoverse 2, so this is a bit of a double whammy in this entry. HC Skills. HC Skills is referring to the Hero Colosseum and its very strange skills. The Hero Colosseum, we all know how it is an auto chess kind of game where you don't actually control the characters pretty much just battle each other, and because of this, characters that have moves that will require input from the player actually have unique versions of these skills in the game files. Super Galagon and Super Ghost Kamikaze attack are pretty notable examples of this, because of the Super Galagon you normally need to hold down the button to charge it, and the Super Ghost Kamikaze attack normally is a time-based ultimate attack, where the ghosts fly out at the enemy depending on how long you have the ghost out. However, since the Hero Colosseum is a one-to-one type of game where you just go through really fast, both of these skills had to be amended inside of the Hero Colosseum. For example, the Super Galagon no longer requires you to charge it as it charges itself up, and the Super Ghost Kamikaze attack actually has its own animation of Gotenks setting the ghost opposite his opponent. This animation is not seen anywhere else in the game and is one of the many examples of exclusive Hero Coliseum skills that do not make an appearance anywhere else in the game. This would not be surprising to me if this was one of the reasons that the Hero Coliseum was discontinued. Clone boss moves. Clone boss moves referring to the Crystal Raid skills, and more specifically the Peerless Room and Marbling Drop versions, which are actually not the ones the raid bosses and expert mission bosses use. These are completely different versions that are a lot more balanced than those versions. Hellfighter 17. Hellfighter 17 actually appears inside of a parallel quest through the PyCon DLC, where this is the only time he ever appears in the game. He's completely identical to Android 17, he's just Android 17 with a different name and villainous aura. Hellfighter 17 is actually a secret variation of Android 17 you can access via modding, kind of like the other unplayable characters. Offline Crystal Raid. We all know how the Crystal Raid can only be played online, correct? Well, the tutorial for the Crystal Raid can actually be played as many times as you want while offline. This just goes to show the functionality for having offline Crystal Raid exists in the game, but it just is not accessible to the average player. Unlock emotes. Unlocking emotes is one of the very obscure things inside of Xenoverse 2. You can actually unlock emotes in the hub world by doing certain emotes in front of certain NPCs. Like if you do the Kamehameha emote in front of some NPCs, you actually unlock like the special beam cannon emote and stuff like that. It's a very fun way to add some immersion to the game's hub world. Broken boss movesets. The bosses, when they were controlled via hacking, were actually incomplete. They had movesets, but they weren't finished. A lot of the combos would just drop randomly. They wouldn't have all the strings a normal cast character would have. This is of course obvious because only the AI would control them and you would never actually notice this problem. Cell's second form to this day still has this problem though. However, when they were added to the Crystal Raids, this was fixed. Speaking of, Corrupted Zamasu update. Corrupted Zamasu was an NPC added all the way back in DLC 4 when Vegito Blue came out. However, he was not made playable till DLC 8 when they were added to the Crystal Raids. However, sometime along the way, Zamasu actually got his own ultimate skill. Originally, Fusion Zamasu did not have an ultimate attack. Instead, he just had nothing there. However, along the way, of course, he got an ultimate attack eventually, and it's just a reskin version of one of his moves with a different camera angle and a combo actually part of the moveset, which is very cool. Expand Transfer Shop. Expanding the Transfer Shop is something not a lot of people would probably know you can do, is by talking to certain NPCs in certain parts of the city, you're actually able to unlock more locations to transfer to with the Transfer Shop, specifically by talking to the robots. They're very hidden and they don't display on the map, so make sure you keep your eye out for them and try and unlock them all. Prince of Destruction Vegeta. Back in the day, Xenoverse 2 actually had Majin Vegeta's name as Majin Vegeta, not Prince of Destruction Vegeta. Prince of Destruction Vegeta was added along the way around DLC 8, I want to say, when mentors were added to the game originally, the custom mentors. Eventually his name, of course, was changed to Prince of Destruction Vegeta and was never changed back. All instances of the name Majin Vegeta from Super Souls and whatnot were also changed to Prince of Destruction Vegeta. Ultimate Transformations. Ultimate Transformations inside of Xenoverse 1 were pretty much skills like Super Saiyan, and Super Saiyan 3 were in your ultimate slots which transformed you. These skills actually exist inside of Xenoverse 2, however they are boss only skills and they exist for one specific reason. These skills of course are actually accessible via mod, however they don't function the same way they did in Xenoverse 1. A Super Saiyan back in that game gave infinite ki. That doesn't work like that in this game. It just functions like the normal awakening skill, yet you can't de-transform. However, inside of Parallel Quest, you might notice that these bosses actually do have awakening skills with Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan 2 and all that. That is because the little status icon of you showing the enemy it's transformed only appears if they have an ultimate skill of Super Saiyan or Super Saiyan 2 or something like that. If they have the awakening skill and they're transformed, that little icon won't show up. This is my guess on why bosses inside of Parallel Quest still have the ultimate versions and not the awakening versions, or Dimps just forgot to change them because half the Parallel Quests were written from Xenoverse 1. Offline raids. Similar to offline crystal raids, offline raids are in a functionality that do not exist inside of Xenoverse 2. Offline raids are similar to offline crystal raids, and the fact that the functionality technically exists in the game is raids are pretty much just expert missions with giant health bars for the enemy that can only be played online. Because of the way this works, and because of how raids I believe were originally going to be played, inside of the message file for all the expert missions titles exists a ton of the game's raids that are still run to this day in expert mission format as unused expert mission. This just goes to show me that raids were originally planned to be played offline or just have an offline mode to be able to play these missions as expert missions. It was never actually added to the game, which really sucks because I feel like raids would be a lot more fun if we could play them solo or at least offline. DLC 16 Yamcha Parallel Quest. This is of course referring to the DLC 16 The Man, the Myth, the Yamcha Parallel Quest, and where Yamcha is of course the star of the quest. It's called the Man, the Myth, the Yamcha, but yet it is one of the worst parallel quests I've ever had to display pleasure of playing in this entire game. It's a slow slog quest where it has a bunch of unskippable dialogue, and it just takes so long. There's a bunch of little health caps where you can't actually progress through the quest. It's a really disastrous quest, and it's the only way to get the special beast cannon and then the apocalyptic burst ultimate skill for your CAC. A complete L of a parallel quest, and something that does not need to exist in the game. Preset chat. Xenoverse 2 is known for not actually having its own chat system, kind of like fighters in all the modern Dragon Ball games, and probably for good reason, because of course it'd be super easy to send inappropriate messages if you had the free reign to be able to type. So the game has a bunch of chat messages. However, the chat messages the game gives you are the most useless chat messages you've ever seen. I'm off to make a mix has not been used by a single person, and you cannot prove me wrong on that. You got capsules. The only time this message on screen is shown is in the Supreme Cry of Time tutorial quest. This message is not seen anywhere else, and that's because the function that's being called to get this message to display is actually called action enable items. This enable items command only exists in the tutorial quest and does not exist anywhere else in the game, so this is the only time you'll ever see this message. Speaking of unused or very rare skills, Big Sphere is yet another one of these skills. Introduced in Xenoverse 1 as the villainous character signature ultimate attack, this skill exists in Xenoverse 2 with the same functionality, except with not having invincibility frames at the end of the attack like it did in Xenoverse 1. Big Sphere, though, does not exist on supervillain characters, which are pretty much the successors to the villainous characters in Xenoverse 1. Instead, they don't even have their own ultimate attack, they just have their normal ultimates as the base characters themselves have, like Cell having perfect Kamehameha and stuff like that. Big Sphere, however, is used on many bosses and NPCs inside a parallel quest, yet you cannot actually obtain the skill normally or use the skill in vanilla play, even through Crystal Rage. None of the Crystal Rage bosses have this skill. Makuji is a very strange NPC, yet a very unique one inside of Xenoverse 2. In the Namek section of Kanton City, if you transfer over there, you'll see an NPC just planting plants inside of the Namek area. Makuji is his name, and if you talk to him, you can actually give him an item to plant. This NPC is so notable is because, to my knowledge, there is no other NPC that has very unique functionality of being able to grow and give you items like this. Some NPCs, of course, give you items for free, but it's not a very common occurrence, and Makuji stands out as one of the very unique NPCs of the game, kind of like Tosan. DLC 16 Stage Error. In the first story quest for the DLC 16 story quests, you fight Cell on the Cell Games arena. However, when the CGI cutscene starts, it actually shows you on the Wasteland stage. This is incorrect, and it's just a little inconsistency with the cutscene. My guess on why this has happened is because the stage originally took place on the Wasteland, but was later changed to the Cell Games arena, as my guess is they wanted to actually incorporate Teen Gohan into the story. It wouldn't make sense for him to be there if it was on the Wasteland stage. One-armed future Gohan in-game. In a very strange loading screen, I believe it's loading screen 6, there's this little piece of art right here which actually shows future Gohan with one arm. This does not exist in the normal game, as future Gohan has two arms but does not fight with it. Because of the way this loading screen looks, you could just technically argue his arms being obscured, but in my opinion it looks like he clearly has one arm here, and it just makes me wonder why he just doesn't have one arm in the game, as Dragon Ball Z Kakarot gave him one arm. Dokkan voices. Many clips from Xenoverse are actually ripped from Xenoverse into Dokkan to voice some intros and active skills. The notable examples of this are AGL Super Saiyan 4 Goku, STR Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta, and Int Majin Vegeta specifically. There's plenty more examples of this, but we'd be here for a while if we went over them all. Here's a little comparison.
Trunks, I haven't hugged you even once since you were a baby. Let's embrace.
Come on, Dad. You're embarrassing me.
Take care, my son.
No.
I know how to be rid of you now. For good. I'll keep you from coming back this time. I blow you to dust. Farewell, Bulma, Trunks. Even you, Kakarot.
Dad!
Trunks, take care of your mother for me.
Huh?
I haven't hugged you even once since you were a baby. Let's embrace.
Come on, Dad. You're embarrassing me.
Take care, my son.
No.
Take those two as far away as you can. Hurry! I'm counting on you, Piccolo. I know how to be rid of you now. For good.
Huh?
This is the first time he's ever fought for something other than himself. This game is on. I'll keep you from coming back this time. I blow you to dust. Farewell,
Kale's Gigantic Meteor. Ever since Xenoverse 1, Gigantic Meteor has been a terrible ultimate attack. It's extremely slow, and even after its buff in one of the DLCs, it's still a terrible ultimate if you cannot land it properly. However, Dim somehow understood the assignment inside of the Kale DLC when they gave her the attack, and it actually is completely different than Broly's version. Instead of throwing that very pointless little ball originally, Kale just punches the enemy and goes right to the actual main part of the attack. The funny part is this version of the ultimate is way better than Broly's, yet Broly still has access to the terrible one he normally has. I understand it's more canon to the lore, but I feel like Kale's version being put on Broly would just be better overall. Costume 60. Inside of the DLC 19 Parallel Quest Spirit Bomb Away, clones from Dragon Ball Fighters actually show up. This is the only Parallel Quest where these NPCs show up. They are not playable anywhere else or not seen anywhere else. The funny thing about this is these clones are not playable at all and are not seen outside of this Parallel Quest, but something very interesting is in play here about these clones. These clones actually use mentor coloring systems, and these clones themselves are actually costumes you can technically add to the roster. If you do though, they will have completely distorted and not correct colored outfits, while in the Parallel Quest they do have the correct outfit because of a special code inside the Parallel Quest changing their colors of their outfits. The funny thing about this is Goku himself actually starts as a Super Saiyan in this Parallel Quest. This is the only time Goku's ever seen as a Super Saiyan without actually having the Super Saiyan Awakening skill, and if you're able to add this Goku to your roster, you can technically have a Goku with the Super Saiyan transformation without needing to transform, which is pretty cool. The funny thing is the shading is missing from the Super Saiyan, so it uses the non-shaded versions of these models, which is very cool. New save strat. I've gone over this before, but inside of Xenoverse 2, when you start a save, you're actually able to pick a skill set. If you pick Afar, you get a charge up skill. If you pick Close Up, you get Super Guard. And if you pick the last option, you get Super Guard, if I'm not mistaken, but you don't get a charge up. However, there's a really cool strat you can do here. If you pick the top option, and then you load into the game and delete your character, and then make a new character over that deleted character and pick the second option, you'll actually have both sets of skills without needing to just pick one. And if you do the same thing again, you can pick the third option and get all the skills possible at the beginning of the game. PQ number 1 timer. The only Parallel Quest inside of Xenoverse 2 without a timer is actually the first Parallel Quest being the tutorial. The timer is a very hated mechanic inside of Xenoverse 2, which many argue is a very artificial way of making Parallel Quest more difficult. Parallel Quest number 1, though, demonstrates the fact that timers don't need to exist in Parallel Quest, and they only exist because of artificial difficulty reasons, or just some kind of padding or something like that. Hopefully Dimps one day goes through and actually adds, or removes more so, the timers from all the Parallel Quests. I feel like the game would just be much better overall. Mass Saiyan quirk. Mass Saiyan was one of the poster children for this game specifically. Mass Saiyan is always seen to not have a voice, however when you play as him in game, he actually uses Bardock's voice clips for everything. This would be simple to disable if they just got rid of the pathing, which loads Bardock's voices over Mass Saiyan's moveset, but they just refuse to do that for some reason, and his aura is also the wrong color. It should be red and purple, kind of like Mira and Toa's, but for some reason it's blue in the base game. Mass Saiyan is a very strange character who's seen no representation inside of Xenoverse 2 other than when the game originally came out. He's seen no updates to my knowledge, and he's just a very strange character overall. He's not even a partner customization character. Mouth movement. Something very strange inside of Xenoverse 2 was the originality that mouth movement was going to exist in the game. Inside of the very old footage for Xenoverse 2, you can actually see in Parallel Quest, Goku when he flies in occasionally moves his mouth. Along the way through Xenoverse 2's life cycle, this was eventually removed from Parallel Quest, and it only ever showed up at the beginning of Parallel Quest. So originally characters were going to have mouth movement when they flew in, but it was removed, my guess is due to time constraint. Expert Quest online differences. Expert missions are one of the most underutilized and really underwhelming features of Xenoverse 2. When I first saw expert missions would be added to the game, I was just so excited, but I could not be more let down by how freaking easy they are. An expert mission themselves, you can probably just go in with one character and solo the entire thing because of how weak the enemies are. are, and this is probably due to this entry itself, the online differences. If you play an expert mission online, bosses have 30% more HP than they do offline. This is due to the fact that the max HP value is being cut by 30% if you play offline. I assume this was done because Dims thought the Parallel Quest would be too hard to play offline otherwise, because of the fact that originally when these missions were made, the level cap was 80. And back then, and back when the level cap was 80 and all the stats were lower, expert missions were a pretty decent challenge. But the expert missions were never amended with the level cap up, making all 20 expert missions, maybe barring Extreme Malice because of the timer, a complete joke. A very, very, very terrible and underutilized feature of Xenoverse 2 are expert missions, and I pray that they fix these before the game stops getting DLC, or should I say if the game stops getting DLC. SSBE Vegeta. Being the only character on the entire roster with a completely unique moveset, Super Soul, and everything tied to this character, SSBE Vegeta takes the title for that. Every single one of SSBE Vegeta's skills and his Super Soul are completely unique to him. His evasive, all his supers and ultimates, everything about Vegeta himself is unique to Vegeta. You would argue his Super Soul might not actually be unique to him, but it is. It has a completely different ID than the one that CAC has, and different entry conditions to actually get the Super Soul to trigger. The Super Soul itself is pretty bad, but overall, SSBE Vegeta being the most unique character in the entire game is something I'm definitely on board with. Creator unique emotes. Something that I found when making a new character a while ago is actually that the game's character creator, when you back out of the menu, actually has completely unique animations you cannot usually use in the emote menu in the base game. My guess for this is because they forgot to be added to the menu, because most of the animations that do show up you can use, but these ones can't for some reason, like the character kick in the ground. Times 10 times 2 unique animation. Inside of the story quest, times 10 times 2 Saiyan Power, I believe is the name. When Grade 8 Nappa is defeated, it shows a very unique animation of him falling over dead. This animation does not show up in any vanilla Parallel Quest except the expert mission Huge Blast for Huge Apes, because all Grade Apes in the actual base game have a unique death animation, except in this expert quest. However, in the expert quest when they fall over defeated, they don't have a special camera, and the animation doesn't take as long. However, in the story quest, it actually does have its own camera animation and everything related to it. This leads me to believe that this was originally going to be the death animation that they use in the Parallel Quest, but the other one instead was put in place, where they just fall over and reach for the screen. MV Variation 2. Majin Vegeta is one of the coolest characters inside of Xenoverse 2, despite having his name changed to Prince of Destruction Vegeta. It's an alright name, but not something I would choose for. However, his second variation is very strange, and this is a bug in the game. Majin Vegeta, like all the other characters, actually does have quotes related to him. He talks to enemies, he talks to characters, and even has his own dialogue as Majin Vegeta himself. However, if you pick a second variation, for some reason, all of his Parallel Quest dialogue is disabled. I don't know why this happens, but I assume for some reason he copies over like supervillain files where those supervillains don't actually have voice lines with any other character. This was an issue that I was always hoping would be fixed, but unfortunately it never was. But though, giving up hope that this issue would be fixed is definitely not a good idea, because I feel like it could always be fixed in an update. Speaking of supervillains, however, the next entry we have is Supervillain Cell. Supervillain Cell is a very unique supervillain among all the supervillains, and this is because Supervillain Cell, unlike all the other supervillains, actually has dialogue with other characters. If Cell fights Goku, Gohan, Piccolo, or any character like that who he normally has dialogue with in his perfect form, he actually talks to those characters, whereas other supervillains like Broly won't talk to any other character. They only have dialogue if they get hurt. Supervillain Cell actually has full functioning dialogue, though. He's the only supervillain like this. I do wish the other supervillains were like this, but just like Majin Vegeta, maybe in an update they'll fix it. UIPQ dodges. Inside of Parallel Quest, you might notice UI Goku dodges a lot more than he does actually if you play as him, and this is because UI Goku actually uses the Super Soul used for expert mission bosses dodging super attacks and just all attacks in general. In a recent update, UI Goku is giving new dodge animations so you can see when he's actually using his own dodge or using the expert mission boss dodges themselves. And because of this, you'll easily be able to tell if he's using the expert mission boss Super Soul, which uses the old dodge animations, whereas UI Goku himself has normal dodge animations unless he has the Super Soul on. That is the mystery on why UI Goku was dodging so much in Parallel Quests. 30k health. Back before the level cap was fully increased, 30,000 health was the absolute max health any character could get. You can now get in the double green pretty easily with any kind of character build. However, 30,000 health was originally the max health you could ever get inside the entire. I remember way back in the day, one of my main goals and bucket lists on Xenoverse 2 was to get above the 30k HP limit with a Majin character. We're able to do that now, and I guess the new bucket list is try to get in the blue health, I suppose. Spirit Bomb Tower. A very strange skill inside the database of Xenoverse 2 is Spirit Bomb Tower. A skill with its own name and functionality being specified in its name itself, being for time patrols and parallel quests. When the skill is used, it behaves like the normal Spirit Bomb skill. However, the animation where Goku gathers the energy into his hand never plays because you can never actually finish the skill. You're put into the Spirit Bomb animation of him raising his hands at the sky infinitely until you're KO'd or until a strip calls for you to get out of the animation but they play scene command. This is a very cool skill and is able to be used yourself if you're able to mod it onto a character, though you're probably just going to end up dying if you try using it. Crystal Raid unique skills. Similarly to the clone boss moves entry, which I would like to actually quickly correct something, clone boss moves also refers to the fact that Great Apes actually have clone moves, being Peeler Storm and Gigantic Ki Blast. Gigantic Ki Blast itself is actually a boss move used in exclamation by normal sized characters. However, Great Apes actually have a clone version of this move where they have their own animation set for it. Same with Peeler Storm, though Great Apes never got Marbling Drop. And funnily enough, even more clone skills were introduced with the Crystal Raid update, being the Peeler Storm that the player themselves can use. However, it has completely different properties and cooldowns, not being able to be used outside of Crystal Raids themselves. JP English Gohan. Gohan against Blue Gogeta in DLC 8 originally had his opening dialogue in Japanese, while Gogeta talked in English. Funnily enough, this was fixed very quickly, though there are still issues like this in the game itself. And one fun one we'll go over in a little bit. Super Saiyan 2 Namek Goku. Super Saiyan 2 Namek Goku actually shows up in the parallel quest. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but I believe it's like called Bond of Family or something like that. Of course, this Namek Goku we can play as can only go up to Super Saiyan 1, which is really dumb. I really wish Mentor costumes could go using any costume of the character, which would fix a lot of these entries, but Super Saiyan 2 Namek Goku is a very fun and unique oddity inside of Xenoverse 2 that has always stuck with me. Make-A-Wish Angry Kamehameha. Back when the game came out, before the first DLC, Namek Goku we all know has Breaker Energy Wave. However, Breaker Energy Wave was a DLC 1 skill, and Breaker Energy Wave was actually put onto Namek Goku in DLC 1. What did he have before that? Well, he had full power energy wave, which kind of looks like Angry Kamehameha if you ask me. The unfortunate thing about this is that Breaker Energy Wave can only be used once, so it being a nerf or a buff is kind of up for debate. Adult Teen Gohan. Yet another speech Gohan entry on here. Gohan, when he fights Bojack in his teen form, actually talks in his adult voice.
Power level's incredible. Hey kid, Earth is a fine planet.
Which makes no sense because fighting Bojack is actually what happens in the movie, and how they mess that up is beyond me, and funnily enough, this issue is not fixed. Rage Trunks' aura. We kind of talked about this one earlier with the Rage Trunks entry, but Rage Trunks has his own aura, which is pretty cool. Hidden variants. Similarly to the unplayable characters entry, characters like Nail, Pod Frieza, Ginyu, Kid Gohan all have very strange, odd, unplayable variants. Nail, for example, has a hidden variant in the game where he has his coat on. Frieza has his pod form as one of his costumes where it's super glitchy. Ginyu has a variant where he can play as the frog version of himself. These all exist because of the fact that these are all fully modeled, and because of the way the game works, if a character's fully modeled, they're technically playable on the roster. This technically means characters like Elder Kai, Toki, all characters like that you see with full models can actually be played as on the roster, and they all use existing fighting styles. A fun fact is that Dende is also playable and uses Omega Shenron's fight style. Male V4 Perfect Kamehameha. If you pick a male and make the fourth voice your preferred voice, when he uses the Perfect Kamehameha, he actually talks in Japanese, which is pretty interesting. JNG and JN. Instead of Xenoverse 2, all characters are assigned IDs. A 3-letter ID to be specific. Goku is GOK, Gohan Adult is GHL, so on and so forth. Characters like Broly, of course, have him and his supervillain version, which are still BRL for both of them. However, Janemba is a very interesting case study. Janemba, for some reason, his normal ID is JNB. But for some reason, his supervillain version is JNG. This doesn't make sense, because Broly, Cell, Frieza, all these characters share their same ID with BRL, GFR, and CL4 for all their variations. But Janemba's the only character with a different ID for his supervillain version. To make things even weirder is, supervillain Janemba has no voice lines to my knowledge. He doesn't talk even in the actual game itself when you're fighting, not just with dialogue. Normal Janemba has all his voices, but supervillain Janemba has no voices, which is my guess on why he has his own ID, but I don't know why they chose Janemba to be specifically silent. Why didn't they do this with Mass Saiyan? The Lost Move. Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta is one of the most hyped characters inside the entire game, and he was actually inside of Xenoverse 1 as well. However, along the way, when Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta came out in the game, he got his own Big Bang Kamehameha, which always functions like the version you would use when you were Super Saiyan. Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta actually had his own Big Bang Kamehameha as well. You know, you just charge it up and you just launch the beam. However, along the way when Blue Gogeta of course came out, his original Big Bang Kamehameha was changed to being Blue Gogeta secretly. It was never announced anywhere that this was changed, it was just changed randomly. And I don't know specifically if it was when Blue Gogeta came out, but it was definitely after he came out. So now, if you try playing a Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, he doesn't have his original Big Bang Kamehameha anymore. He uses the one that Blue Gogeta has. Meaning, his original Big Bang Kamehameha is a move that is lost to time that cannot be used unless you put it on your CAC, which functions like Blue Gogeta if you put it on your CAC with a transformation. PQ95 Birder Error. Aside of this quest, for some reason, Birder has Paralyzed Beam in his skill set when he should not. I assume this is just due to a copy and paste, a lazy job at that, when copying skills over from other quests. They accidentally gave Birder this skill for some reason. This error persists in a lot of quests that actually have the Ginyu Force, because for some reason in one of the story quests where you fight the Ginyu Force from GT, Raccoon actually has Mach Punch, which is Birder's attack. We gotta step it up then with our copying and pasting skills, even that's getting a little weary. Supervillain Broly error. If you look very closely at Supervillain Broly's portrait on the quest screen, you'll see at the bottom of where Broly's neck is, if you look all the way down, you will actually see where the portrait cuts off, and you'll just see a blank space under it. This is of course because of the improper placement of the portrait in the actual files, and it needs to be moved down a little bit, or it needs to be stretched down a tiny bit. Supervillain Broly is the only character this happens with. It doesn't even happen with normal Broly. Turles trailer error. Inside of the trailer for Extra Missions, it shows a bunch of the characters in Extra Missions, of course. However, it shows Turles flying in. However, he has the wrong transformation applied to him. Usually in the game, the transformation applied to Turles in Extra Missions is 400. However, the one they put in the trailer is transformation 402. Which is actually used for supervillain characters, and it's also used for supervillain characters to get rid of their dialogue as well. Turles has this applied to him in the trailer, which is of course a mistake. He should have 400 applied to him. Legend Patrol Buu Saga bug. I think I'd be better off just showing you this one. Dude, it's doing it again. What is this?
I think everyone's in the wrong spot.
What the fuck?
What causes that?
Dude, then it goes back to normal.
What causes that?
They must load the actors in the wrong order or something. Why this happens, I don't actually know. I assume it has to do with the demo actors being in the wrong placements in the .dem file, but I could be wrong on that. I believe this error was fixed, by the way. Gamma's Transform. DLC 16 was a very exciting time for Xenoverse 2, adding a bunch of very cool story elements into the game with Beast Gohan himself. However, in that DLC, the Gammas actually got their own transformation. It's called just VMG, if I'm not mistaken. VMG is the transformation they get in this very specific story quest, where it's technically them being powered up by Dr. Hedo, or Distortions in Time. My memory's a little fuzzy on the story mode of that actual quest. The point is, though, they get their own transformation, and this transformation does nothing for them in the actual game if you put it on them. If you put it on them, though, since it's an actual skill that exists, they can actually use the skill, and they do transform, but it does nothing, as I stated. It functions exactly as if you put the Time Breaker skill character on a random character, where they do the little mind control animation. However, that skill gives you invincibility frames, this version doesn't. Also, this version's a little bit faster and gives you the potential to unleash aura with red lightning, which is very cool. I really do hope they do something with this in the future. 17 cutscene error. In the Cell Saga cutscene where it shows Cell about to absorb 17, 17, before this happened, has a cutscene of him being inside of villainous mode. However, in the actual game itself, he's in Time Breaker. This is an error in the game's code where they should have put the correct transformation flag on 17 in his QXD character section file. They should have put 300 instead of 400. PQ number 1 Revive Oddity. Parallel Quest number 1 is no stranger to little oddities like this, because just like the timer whole fiasco, we actually have another fiasco where you can actually revive P4. Normally inside a quest where you have a 4th ally, when that ally goes down you can't revive them. However, inside of Parallel Quest number 1 you can actually revive Krillin. This is because of a flag that was put on him in his QML entry, but unfortunately this does not carry over to any future allies inside of Parallel Quest. I feel like a lot of the Parallel Quests would be a lot more bearable if this feature was carried over. One vehicle added. I touched on this earlier with the vehicles entry, but only one vehicle was added through DLC. Times 10 times 2 Vegeta. Yet another entry related to this very specific story mission is Vegeta's line when Nappa dies originally. Inside of Xenoverse 1, the same line plays when he's in his base form. However, inside of Xenoverse 2, since they of course copy and pasted the entire game, Vegeta says this exact line, but he's actually a great ape in Xenoverse 2.
Damn it. Nappa lost. Stupid idiot.
But he talks in his normal voice, which is pretty funny. Earthling camera. Similarly to what I was talking about with Godfist, however, the animation finishes with the Earthling stance. All cutscenes actually put the player character in the Earthling stance before the fight starts, before it switches to your normal stance if you're not an Earthling. This is so they didn't have to make about 8 different versions of all cutscene files to have the correct stances, which makes sense. Scatter attack failure. Something a lot of players might not know is a scatter attack in expert missions can actually fail under 2 circumstances. One, online, you have a 1 in 6 chance of the attack failing and playing a unique animation, or offline, or if you're the only character alive, the scatter attack will fail and you won't get sent through the dimension. Both of these are very rare circumstances that I'm pretty sure a lot of players never even knew existed, because of how very infrequently you play expert missions, and even more infrequently the scatter attack is used. 2 times Raid Saucer. Similar to the Birder error in 95, Broly inside of the story mission Life or Death Battle Out of My Way actually has 2 instances of Raid Saucer on his skill set. This is impossible. Characters cannot have 2 of the same ID in his skill tree. He has 534, which is Raid Saucer, 2 times in his super attack slots. You cannot do this in the actual game. Very cool to see. This actually appears a few times, a lot in Xenoverse 1 actually, but this was never actually fixed, and I guess it technically makes Broly a bit tougher because Raid Saucer is a really broken skill. Ginyu Vegeta. Ginyu Vegeta's a pretty simple one. Ginyu Vegeta is the only main roster character without an evasive skill. STN. Spirit Bomb Away is yet again no stranger to oddities, as inside of that quest, Android 21 has a very weird skill dubbed STN, which is actually the ID of Hercule. STN is a skill that just puts you in the poison animation for a few frames. This is obviously just used to simulate Android 21 being possessed by Evil 21, who doesn't actually exist in this game. But it's definitely a very interesting skill. SS2 Vegito. When Vegito has the Super Saiyan 2 Ultimate skill equipped to him, he actually says this is Super Vegito 2 now. The fun fact about this only exists in Xenoverse 1, and it does not actually exist in Xenoverse 2 if he uses the Awakening skill Super Saiyan 2. JP English Gogeta. Gohan wasn't the only one talking in Japanese to Gogeta, as Gogeta himself must have learned from that, and actually talking Japanese to the player when they get KO'd. If Gogeta Blue KOs you and he actually talks in Japanese. The weird thing about this, though, is that Gogeta, while he talks in Japanese, unlike Gohan, this was fixed, and then it was broken again in a future update. How that happened, I couldn't even begin to tell you. 460. Grade 8s are known for not having very many skills. They just have Grade 8 Beam, Peeler Storm, Boulder Break, and Boulder Toss. However, inside of the story quest where Goku is being controlled and turned into Super Saiyan 4, or Vegeta goes Super Saiyan 4 depending on what you choose, Grade 8 Vegeta eventually grabs Goku no matter what you choose. And during that sequence, that's actually a skill Grade 8 Baby does have. Inside of the game's files, a hidden skill is known for the Grade 8s, not being in the 440s like all the other Grade 8 skills, but 460. This skill has no name and has no functionality other than putting you in an invulnerable state, being in the grabbing animation for the Grade 8 to simulate Baby grabbing Goku. The fact they made an entire skill for this is very cool, and is one of the most cinematic quests inside of Xenoverse 2, and it really gives me hope for the new DLCs coming out. The Bora variant. Similarly to Hellfighter 17, Costume 200 of Deborah is actually named Deborah variant, who shows up in the quest where UI Sign Goku actually shows up. Nothing more to go over, he's just a clone of Deborah with a different name, like Hellfighter 17 with Android 17. Super Phil and Golden Frieza's skill set change. When the game came out, Golden Frieza actually had maximum charge for some reason. All supervillains have Darkness Mixer, but Super Phil and Golden Frieza had maximum charge. Along the way, and if I'm not mistaken, this was changed when Breaker Energy Wave was added to the game, when Namegoku got his skill set change. Golden Frieza later on got Darkness Mixer instead of maximum charge. Tutorial Kamehameha. However, it's not obtained until very late in the game, which makes it even more confusing when its description says you need ki to use ultimate attacks. This little issue actually shows up in Xenoverse 1, and its description was copied from that game, which is why it shows up. Meaning, in Xenoverse 1, at one point in development, Super Kamehameha was probably meant to be one of the first ultimates you got. This issue was never fixed, and the description was never corrected. Earth in Danger Xenoverse 1. Inside of Xenoverse 1, this is similar to the 2-time Raid Saucer entry, but this is a Xenoverse 1 entry, which, in my opinion, makes it even more obscure. This is something I've noticed a long time ago. Vegeta, inside of the quest, Earth in Danger, he's obviously a Super Saiyan in his Scouter outfit, which actually shows up inside of Xenoverse 2. However, in Xenoverse 1 specifically, he has Finish Breaker equipped in his Y and B slot. As I explained with Raid Saucer, you cannot have 2 IDs of the same number in the same skill tree at the same time. In Xenoverse 2, when this quest was ported over, they actually fixed Vegeta's moveset, and he doesn't have Finish Breaker anymore. He just has Shine Shot and Meteor Strike, if I'm not mistaken. Pre-DLC 9, Kamehameha Camera Glitch. UI Goku is one of the most fun characters in the game. However, his first variation, before Divine Kamehameha was added, only has the normal Kamehameha skill. Something you might have not noticed, though, about that Kamehameha is it's actually its own ID. It has the same functionality to my knowledge, but it is its own ID. Meaning, it's one of those unique universal moves I was talking about earlier. The funny thing is, we all know when you charge the Kamehameha, it shows a little camera zooming behind your character, right? Well, this issue back before DLC 9 came out, this was actually a problem in the game, where the Kamehameha camera would not actually activate for UI Goku or First Form Cell specifically. This was later fixed, however. God Goku's reused voice. God Goku is one of the most underwhelming and disappointing characters in the entire game without a doubt. Not only does he have no movesets unique to him, he has no moves unique, none whatsoever. All his moves are reused from Goku. Not only that, but he himself uses base Goku's voice for all his voice pathing. Normally when you build a character inside of Xenoverse 2, if you know what you're doing, you know that characters actually need paths directed to the voice lines, the proper ones. God Goku uses all of base Goku's voice lines for some unexplainable reason. They didn't even make him use Blue Goku, they just made him use God Goku's. I don't understand what the hell was going on with God Goku when they added him to this game. In Battle Z, he was one of the coolest characters ever, and in this game, he's a complete letdown. Gogeta Blue's Soul Punisher. We all know that really cool combo you can do with Super Gogeta's Soul Punisher, right? And Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta can do it as well. Well, I mean, if you didn't know, Gogeta Blue can also do that same little animation of him turning around with the Soul Punisher. If you do a very specific combo where your back is to the enemy during a combo, like kind of like this that you see on screen. Super Saiyan 1 Mass Saiyan. Something a lot of people probably weren't aware of is inside of the Expert Mission files for A History of Mixed Battle, notably being one of the most confusing and very interesting quests in the entire game. Mass Saiyan actually has the ID for Super Saiyan in his ultimate skill slot. This is the only time in the entire game Mass Saiyan actually gets access to a transformation, let alone the Super Saiyan Awakening skill. Mass Saiyan can actually show up in this quest, and it's very rare for him to do, but he can use the Super Saiyan 1 skill even without the patch by eternity. Kaioken Goku Black, Yamcha, and Krillin. Inside of Xenoverse 1, Yamcha and Krillin had access to the Kaioken transformation. Inside of Xenoverse 2, though, they don't have access to it anymore, but their voice files still exist for it in the game because it was ported from the first game. Goku Black, however, also has lines for the Kaioken, which is very fun. OP in-game early. Back in the DLC 16 pre-patch update for the DLC, Cell Max was added, as we talked about in like the first entry, pretty much. However, Orange Piccolo was added with East Gohan. But the fun fact is, Orange Piccolo was in the game for 3 months before Beast Gohan was. In the quest where you unlock Beast Mode, Orange Piccolo is your ally. This quest was in the game before Beast Gohan came out, meaning if the patcher was updated at the time, or if you just knew what you were doing, you could actually play as Orange Piccolo 3 months before he came out. All his moves were in the game too, if I'm not mistaken. Overshoot KO counter. In very, very, very rare circumstances in the Endurance quest, Metal Cooler Riot, or Majin Chaos, if you time things correctly, you can actually overshoot the KO counter. You can kill 21 enemies instead of 20 in Metal Cooler Riot, or 31 enemies instead of 30 inside of the Majin Chaos quest. Unused dual skills. Inside of the game's files, there's 2 unused dual ultimate skills. Dual Candy Beam, which has no functionality, and a clone of Dual the Savior is called. NBA. Cell Max was one of the most interesting things ever added to Xenoverse 2, being the only unique boss character added since Fusion Zamasu pretty much. Cell Max only has a few skills, that being Purge Cannon, Disaster Ray, Explosive Scream, and Max Barrier. However, NBA is a hidden skill inside of Cell Max's data. It's an unused skill for Cell Max that has no functionality if modded into the game. My guess is that this NBA might have been a marbling drop version for Cell Max, but we do not know as it was never actually added for the game. Let's hope they do something with it. That was a lot, guys, but that's about it for the Ultimate Xenoverse 2 Iceberg. I hope you all enjoyed and learned something a bit new. I honestly got this idea just when I was playing Xenoverse a bit again recently, knowing the new DLC was coming out pretty soon. I thought it'd be pretty fun to just make a new Xenoverse 2 Iceberg, combining just so many of the facts that I knew about the game. I hope you all managed to learn something new and were able to get something coming out of this video, or at least had a nice, enjoyable time watching it. But anyway, guys, I'm all out of time for today. I will see you all next time. Bye.